I'm Magali, and this is the Knit Yorker podcast where we chat about all things knitting, from patterns to things that are going on in the knitting community. And as this is the first podcast of the new year, 2024, and I already posted a video recently where I looked at all of my patterns and projects that I worked on last year and that I thought that I didn't really have made a lot of, but turns out I did, and I posted a video about it. And I also talked about all the projects that I am not finished with, that I'm kind of carrying over to the new year. Quite a few, really, that I want to finish. But I did want to take a moment on today's podcast to just kind of think about what the new year brings. I feel like that's the nice thing about this celebration, is that we just pause for a second before we continue with our busy lives and look at all the things that we did and all the things that we are looking forward to or that we're trying to achieve. It was kind of a crazy year. I don't want to touch on anything outside knitting today just because it was just crazy and personal and just the world in general. And want to keep things light with this podcast, I'm not going to focus on that. And instead, I'm just going to think on the future and what the new year brings, what ideas I have, what kind of thing I want to put forward. I don't really like to use the words resolution. I don't know, it can kind of seem silly to me, and historically I don't really stick to them. I gotta say, I think I will, and I try, but in the end it doesn't take very long for me to kind of forget what it is that I was even thinking. Even in past videos, I think like I put together lists of projects that I wanted to do, and then I didn't. I didn't actually do most of them. I've done that quite a few times. The whatever trending name at the time, where you like take a certain number of projects that you want to make and talk about them. So instead, I think I want to just think of more general ideas about how to go into the new year and what to take into account. I think they're kind of like light resolutions because they're all things that I already am trying to do and I've been trying to practice in my daily life. But if I go with them with a more distinct idea of what it is, I think it's more helpful to kind of keep that as like the spearheading thing that just, I don't know. I don't even know how to put it into words, if you know what I mean. I guess all I'm saying is these are my resolutions. Going back full circle, and after all that, the first thing that I want to kind of put myself into this idea is to finish the projects I haven't finished. I definitely do not want to start the new year casting something on when I have like 4 or 5 or 6 projects that are sitting there looking at me and waiting to be finished. I have some deadlines that I have to make, some projects that I'm working on that are with external people or that I put a deadline to that I really want to finish. And I'm not going to dwell too much on those because I talked about them in my other video. If you want to watch that, I go into detail about what those projects are. But yeah, like definitely do not get distracted. And I'm telling you, it was so hard today. I was looking at some new things I wanted to do that were like calling my attention, sewing projects especially. And I was like, no, I gotta finish the sewing projects that are sitting there already cut and not finished. And of course, all the knitting projects that I started late in the year and that didn't quite finish. So that is the first thing. Just finish what I started and make it like the priority instead of just going in and starting other crazy things. The other thing that I want to keep putting forward is using up my stash. And I think a lot of people talk about stash busting and using up your stash. And I think there are 2 reasons why it's becoming such a huge thing to talk about stash busting. And one of them, of course, is the financial part of it. Like let's not be kidding. A lot of us, even if you are like in a good financial position, are looking at how much expensive things are these days and thinking like, what are ways I could save? And working with the stuff you already have obviously is like the most obvious one. So I think that's one of the reasons stash busting is becoming so popular at the moment. But also, from a personal point of view, I think it has to do with not wanting to make my stash grow even bigger because of space. I have a full video with my guest Ira from Cooking It, where we talk about our stashes and how we deal with them. And one of the things I say in that is like, because I live in a small apartment, smallish, I don't have a lot of storage in general, and so my stash is pretty small as it is, but I don't want to keep adding to it this year. I really want to focus on what I already have. And I also think it kind of creatively challenges me, because sometimes it's just easier to buy the stuff you need for a project. And I do have some skeins in there that I know that were gifted, or I bought before I really knew what to do with them, or I've had since forever, and maybe they were for a certain project and then I kind of forgot about that project or didn't like it as much anymore. And I also have a lot of scraps, which I definitely have like a blanket idea for scraps. And yeah, so I think it makes me creative and trying to think like, okay, how can I make these scraps work together? How can I make this random skins that I have? What projects can I put them on? And how can I avoid getting new yarn, basically? I will also give some exceptions to myself. If I end up collaborating with a brand or with any yarn related company, I will give myself the grace to accept the yarn. But I think I will also limit those so that it doesn't kind of become pointless. And even though I'm saying I'm not adding yarn, I'm like getting all this yarn. So, and this goes to my sewing stash as well. That one is actually in more of need of being used. I do not have space. I do not have space for like one more yard of fabric. That I accumulated a lot last year and I didn't sew very much. So it's time to get to sit down and sew and use it. I have a harder time using the scraps, so you will see a lot of scrappy projects for sewing as well coming up. So yeah, I think, again, a lot of people talk about stash busting, and I can really feel it, that it's weighing on me, that all this stuff is just sitting there and I'm not using it. So I am going to make the best that I can to not purchase stuff for any of my stashes. That is probably a resolution that will resonate with a lot of you, I think. And then another thing, it's not really related to, well, I guess kind of side related to knitting and to crafting, is that I do want to kind of limit my purchase of new clothes, which is something I think I've done a lot in the past, that in general my consumption of clothing has become way less than it used to be, even just like 3-5 years ago. Not that I ever did spend a lot of money that I don't have, but I think used to see shopping more as like a hobby, or like adding new clothes as like sometimes even some anxiety of like, I can't be wearing the same clothes over and over. And it took a lot of deconstruction to get out of that mentality and to appreciate the stuff that I do have, and to also realize that there were some stuff that I wasn't wearing and that I could let go of and replace, but not just constantly add more and more to my closet. Once again, we come to the problem of, you know, having limited space, so I don't want to keep adding to my closet. And I also, because again, I realize there's a lot of things that I don't really know how to fit some of my clothes together with other clothes. So I think it's kind of an interesting way of creatively push myself to find ways of using the clothes that I do have and make new outfits with them. So it'll be interesting to do that. And I do have my winter clothing and then my spring summer clothing separate and put away depending on the season. And I realized that whenever I switch the clothing and switch the closets, they feel new again. And I want to use that opportunity to look at all my clothes and combine them, maybe take pictures of different outfits as I take them out, and help decide, you know, kind of stay fresh and rediscover my clothing. So yes, basically all that to say, I will try not to buy new clothes with a few conditions, a few things that I will allow myself to do. One is that if I need any underwear, it'll not apply to that, because, you know, if your socks have holes, you need new socks. There's nothing you can do about that. So this will not come to any underwear or underclothes, like tights or an undershirt that, for heat or something like that. I will not count it for that. I also will not count secondhand clothing, which is a dangerous thing to say because I feel like as it is, I do shop secondhand a lot. Thrifting is like, has become something that I really sometimes go to first, but I don't want to like use it as a crutch and over shop, over thrift or something like that. So I will allow myself to thrift, but moderation. So I will not count those, only like new clothes. And as it is, I was trying to think about the clothes that I bought in the last year, and I don't think they were that many, but I definitely did buy things here and there, which is fine, I don't know why sometimes I would feel a little bit guilty about it. And I think it's like, I guess that whole overconsumption mentality that I had went to the other extreme, and now I'm just trying not to buy things at all. And so this is kind of like a reset, to just not see shopping as an outlet for stress in any way. And also, give myself the opportunity to thrift when I need something and when I think it'll be a good addition to my closet. And I will not, of course, count any clothes that I make. So that's when like things go back into a circle of, if I'm not adding to my stash, I'm using my stash to make clothes that fit with what I already have. So it's a lot of, staying within what's already in my closet and my stash. And make new clothes. It's not buying new clothes. There's a loophole there, and I will not count those. And then finally, I think the other last resolution idea that I have is trying to get more into vintage again. I was really into it for a while. You saw a lot of videos when I was making vintage inspired or using vintage patterns and wearing them, and historical clothing is something that I'm really into right now, and I have some ideas of things to make with that. But just in general, vintage I kind of fell out of, and I miss it. I miss vintage style. I mean, I feel like it will always be kind of part of my style one way or another, especially because of the clothes that I already have. But just putting the effort to use what I already have, or use the fabric and the yarn that I have to make vintage inspired clothing that kind of fits that whole aesthetic more. I am pushing myself to do that and make the effort, because in the end it is more of an effort, I think, to like think about that and think about when I'm dressing up in the morning and not just like put on a pair of jeans and whatever and go. So definitely I will make it this year's priority to bring vintage back. As for the knitting plans that I do have for this year, other than finishing all the projects that are in my list, I have a few patterns that I've already identified from the stuff that I have in my stash that I can make with. Some of them I bought the yarn for that specific project, so I just have to like actually make it, and it's been sitting there. I have some yarn for specific projects that's been sitting there for like over a year. So again, prioritizing those. So I think having this list is actually helpful, because I've already thought ahead of what I can use my stash for. So it's easier to like focus and not get distracted by looking at Ravelry and finding other cute patterns, but like really sticking to my queue. And it's kind of funny to say that, because like that's the whole point of the queue on Ravelry, or like the planning the project. But weirdly enough, I don't always stick to it. I always kind of like, I look at the queue and I'm like, yeah, but what if I make this instead? I do that a lot. I don't know. So it is an effort for me to stick to the plan. And if the yarn is already there, I think that makes it easier. So anyway, these are some of the patterns that are in my queue in order. I will even link you to my Ravelry queue if you want to see that I actually have that there. I feel like the order might change because of depending on how fast I finish what I have and where the weather will be. If it's already like the summer, I might not start something that's more warm, and vice versa. So I am not it's not in any specific order really yet, but these are some of the projects that I have in mind. So the first one is the Owlery blouse by Fable Knitwear. I do love Fable Knitwear, and I do have a lot of her patterns, both in my library and in my favorites, honestly. And this is one that I've been eyeing for literally over a year. I bought the yarn. I bought it in Rhinebeck last year. I have yarn from Bare Naked Wools, and I do want to make it in that neutral cream color, kind of like the one in the pattern. I sometimes do that when I see the colors in the sample, and I'm like, that's exactly what I want. I don't want anything different. So this one, I think it'd be nice because it'll be like a lighter type of blouse that I can wear in the late spring and in the early fall. So it's gonna be a very fun project. I think it's very pretty. It also goes with my vintage style, so all the things converge. It works perfectly. Another project that I've actually already made this pattern before, and I gifted it, and after I did that I was like, I really want to make this for myself. So I bought the yarn as part of the Knit Picks haul that I did earlier this year. I bought a bunch of yarn from Knit Picks for some projects that I'm already working on. So this one was one of them, and this is the Berry Slipover by Witter Design. And yeah, so I bought bulky Knit Picks yarn, Wool of the Andes, that I think it was in a darker color, not quite black, but it was like a dark gray. And I love this one. Again, I already made it. It's quite a quick knit because of the bulky yarn, because it has no sleeves. Like, there's so many, like, this is just kind of like a quick one. But it's also very functional, and my idea of this one's a lot for commuting, because I found that wearing something with heavy sleeves can be a little annoying when you're wearing like a heavy coat. So I might make this one sooner just because I think it'll be very helpful for this winter and winters to come. I also have one skein of Pearl Soho Cashmere Merino wool that I've been trying to figure out what to do with. Like, it's not really enough to make something like a shawl even, but I also have noticed that I do wear kind of the same 2 or 3 hats over and over and over in the winter, and I'm kind of tired of them. You'll probably see them in my pictures all the time. So basically, I think I'm in need of more accessories. I knit hats all the time, but I gift them a lot, so I need to make more for myself. And this one, I hope that the yarn will work for this, because I think it's not quite the weight that it asks for, but I will try to gauge, swatch, and make it work. And this is a Picot hat and hand warmers, also from Pearl Soho. This is a pattern by them. They're very sweet, very cool, and I think because I know that Pearl Soho Cashmere Merino wool is like the softest, nicest yarn, because I made already a sweater with it before, twice. I think it's gonna look really pretty, and it's gonna be very warm and, again, functional. Just getting them all out there, all the things that I need. I also have 2 socks that I want to make. 2 different patterns. And I have I have more than 2 sock yarn skeins, but I have 2 that I'm kind of thinking will work for these. The first one are these retro rib socks that are a little higher up. I think they're very cute. Again, they work with the whole vintage idea. And I do have Sorilla yarn nylon sock in the Autumn in New York collection. I think it's like a gray type of color, so I think it'll work very well, again, with the pattern and with the vintage idea. This pattern is by Evelyn Clark, and I found it on Ravelry. I was looking for more vintage style socks that I could wear. Another pattern for socks that I actually don't remember the name, but these socks have that little, when you're a little kid in the 90s, you would wear these socks that had a little frill around the edge. I've been thinking about that frill a lot, even though I remember as a kid those were very uncomfortable socks, but they were not wool. They had kind of like a trim or something that was itchy. But I think it would look very cute, and especially in the summer with like short socks that and shoes. And anyway, so I want to try and make those, and I have these yarn that I bought also at Rhinebeck. That's a degradé situation going on that I have not really been able to decide what to do with them. So maybe I'll try these socks with that yarn. Other than that, I have some Malabrigo yarn Rios that I bought in LA randomly when I was visiting last year. I bought like I think it was like 4 or 5 skeins, because that was all the ones they had in that color. And I don't know, I saw it and I was like, I don't know, for some reason I just need to buy this Malabrigo yarn right now. I think I have enough to make the Olive cardigan by Knitting by Olive, which it's another thing that I've been wanting to wear more, are cardigans in general. I think I make and wear a lot of pullovers, but cardigans are fun and kind of a different style. And I have a long list of beautiful cardigans that I've saved. And so I went through my list and I found the ones that kind of fit the amount of yarn and the weight that I have for that Malabrigo arrives. That's the plan. This is going to be my cardigan of the year. Hopefully I make more, but again, without buying yarn, it's going to be harder. So I'll try to not get too sidetracked and make more cardigans with other yarn that I don't have. And finally, there's this project that I've had this yarn for quite a while. It's a gift, and I wanted to make this exact hat, and I think it's been on my list of what I'm gonna make this year for at least 2 or 3 years or 4 years. I don't even remember when it was the first time I put that in my queue. I don't know why I just keep passing it over. I don't know. I really don't know. And that's why this is the year I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make this IB Dean by Woolly Wormhead hat, and the yarn that I have is Northlight Fibers Water Street in DK. It's a gray yarn, and I wanted to show you all the yarn that I'm talking about, but it's all in storage. I put it all in one of those vacuum seal bags so that it would be safe from moths. Not that I have any moths, but I've heard from some people that I know that have had moths, and it kind of made me a little petrified, a little scared of having them randomly. I don't know why I would have them, but in my mind I'm just like, I think it's time to put yarn away. So when the yarn that I'm not planning on using anytime soon, or most of my yarn really, it's in some vacuum seal bags in the closet. So that's why I didn't want to take it out at the moment. But again, it was another reason why I looked at it and I was like, what's the point of having all these yarn in the closet? I need to use it. So if by the end of the year all I have left is scraps, which that's the goal, right? That would be great. Then I will try to make a blanket. And there are quite a few scrappy blankets out there, and I did find one that I thought looked cute, which is the Northeasterly by Skinanigans. And what I liked about this one is that it was the kind of blanket that you can just kind of add on to as you go, and you don't have to sew at the end, which is my favorite kind of blanket, that no weaving and no adding at the end. And it's also, I think, for fingering yarn, which I do happen to be having a lot of finger and weight yarn, I think. So that is kind of the purpose of all those scraps that I have. And I feel like even after using them, it's not going to be enough to finish the blanket. So this is going to be on the go, keep adding as you go for a few years maybe, blanket. And it'll be scrappy. The colors might not go together. I don't care. I just want to use every bit of yarn that I have in the house. And this is the way to do it, I think. And if I actually get to knit through all my stash, I do have more yarn than what I mentioned here. I just don't know what to do with it. The other yarn that I have, I don't think I have specific plans yet. So I will have to find purchase for those. But even if I were to make all of this, I think my yarn quantity in general will go down a lot. Definitely my sweater quantity of yarn. I think this is all that I have at the moment. So as you can see, it's not like a lot, but if I complete my goal, I will definitely have a lot less, and then maybe I will allow myself to buy yarn. It's kind of a weird thing to think that can people actually knit through all of their stash, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I can't even imagine it, but it's a nice thought. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with that question. I would love to know, what are your plans for crafting in the new year, for knitting, sewing, crocheting, any other type of crafty, or even as I was saying, like, do you have a no buying yarn, no buying anything, no buying clothes? I don't know. I know someone who said they're literally not buying anything other than food and, things that you actually need. But I don't know. That's kind of an intense goal. I am not gonna do that, but I will attempt this no new clothes, no new yarn situation, and we'll see how soon that'll. No. I'm not. I'm gonna be positive, but I won't see how long it'll break. I'll try to stick to it, but I won't make myself feel too bad if it doesn't happen. I do have some traveling plans coming up in the future, and I feel like when I travel, I like to buy some yarn as a souvenir, and I like to do that better than buying like random stuff as souvenirs. So maybe that'll be another condition or like another exception for my rule, because I do have some traveling that will lead me to some yarn. Anyway, already before I put any more exceptions to my rule, I'm gonna let you go, and definitely tune in the future, because I have a lot of projects that I want to make other than these, and a lot of other things that I want to talk about with you. And keep an eye, if you don't follow me on Instagram, keep an eye on my stories, or follow me at the Knit Yorker, because I do ask questions sometimes over there, and I read your responses, and I always find that fun in a way, kind of participating in the podcast and hearing from you. So make sure to check that out, or leave a comment about what it is that you are planning in for the new year. I hope that you have a safe and happy new year 2024, and that you get to stick to your resolutions or goals. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Remember to subscribe, follow, all those stuff. It always helps. Happy New Year, happy knitting.